Welcome to the McGrath-Mudgee Region Podcast Network, your source of real estate news, market insight and education. In this special Movember series, we're sitting down with the members of the McGrath-Mudgee Region team and special guests from our community to open up the conversation and break down stigmas associated with men's mental health. At McGrath-Mudgee Region, we believe that when having a platform so ingrained in the community as ours, it's important that we are helping to support and grow that community in a positive way. In today's episode, our very own Ben Reynolds' brother, Dave, a former member of the Australian Defence Force, talks about the challenges of readjusting to regular civilian life and living with PTSD.
Well, thanks for joining us, Dave. As you know, mental health is pretty important to everyone, particularly this time of year to men with Movember, given that we've both got some nose furniture at the moment, indicates that it is Movember. Your story is an interesting one, obviously 5 years in the military, and obviously earlier on coming home from Afghanistan or coming out of the army, you were diagnosed with PTSD. And so we just want to talk about that today, and if there's anyone out there that's struggling that may be dealing with PTSD, maybe of benefit to them. So, mate, basically the start of the journey for you, I guess the decision to get into the army, what was that like?
Yeah, well, I don't really know where it come from. So obviously we don't have any military background in our family. I think from maybe 17 or 18, or dreamed of joining the military, but never really had the balls to just make the call and sign up. I was doing an electrical apprenticeship at the time, and one day I just thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a go. I made the phone call. That's when I was 19. I think I made it in maybe January or February, and by October I was down in Kapuka doing my basic training. So that was back in 2007. From there, from Kapuka I went to Singleton to do my infantry training. Then I graduated from there, I think in March 2008. Unfortunately, I made the decision to play rugby for the Army, the Singleton Army side in there, and I had a knee reco, so I dusted me up on the rugby field before I could be deployed to up to one of our battalions. So I was meant to go up to Townsville, up to 2RR, and I ended up getting stuck in Singleton for 6 months while I had a knee reco and recovered from that. I had a Lars graft, which was like an artificial graft that they put in my knee, and I passed the basic fitness test I think about 3 months after I had the knee reco, so it was a pretty accelerated recovery. And then luckily I got posted to 8-9 Battalion up in Brizzy. So I moved up there, I think at the end of 2008. I was in the Battalion 8-9, I was in Bravo Company there for a good six months or something, and then being a relatively new rifle company, they were fast tracking everyone through their support courses. So I was lucky enough to get a mortars course, which turned out really well because 6RA was getting geared up at the time to go to Afghanistan. So on the back end of that, we were out on a course just after I finished my basic mortars, and we got the phone call that be prepared. He's getting the call up with 6RA going over to Afghanistan. So yeah, we prepared for that for a while, and then over in I think 2010, in January 2010, I rolled out to Afghanistan. I think you come up to Brizzy to see me off. Yeah, so that was that.
I guess, sorry, just on that, obviously being a family member, seeing one of your only brother go off to Afghanistan, it was pretty hectic, and obviously was for the family as well. Sorry, you keep going. Yeah,
so we got there in their winter, so it was absolutely freezing over there. We did all our training. We went through our Minhad in Dubai. Did all our training there. Then we flew over in Afghanistan, and we were in Tarank out there for probably 4 days trying to figure out how we were going to get out to our base.
Is that because of obviously what was going on over there at the time?
No, it was pretty quiet. In winter over there, it's fairly quiet. Not too much happens. It was just the water and the snow and everything was making it hard. There was obviously Australia didn't have many assets allocated to them, so we couldn't get out there by chopper. We ended up having to do a road move, and so my first introduction to outside the wire on the road move, we got to another patrol base called Mirrorwires. We had to camp there overnight. It was bloody freezing. And then from there, we meant to move off the next day, and we found an IED. Luckily, it was detected first. And then from there, we had all our packs, our bags, everything. And our first introduction was to carry all our shit for about 4Ks into the, it was called Command Outpost Marshall. And I just remember being terrified because of all the training you do, all the identification of IEDs and that sort of stuff. I just remember I was just walking in the footsteps of the person in front of me because I didn't want to make the wrong step. But obviously, the longer you get there, the more comfortable you get. And over the period of about 9 months we were over there, it's just like walking down the street in Mudgee by the end of it. So you don't have an issue at the time. I guess
the locals accept you.
Oh, yeah, yes and no. They're not too bad. They come and I think they gave us naan bread and stuff when we're walking in, but there depends where you go. In different little areas, they're little tribal villages and that sort of stuff. So they're receptive. Some are receptive. Some are happy to see you, and some just snarl at you every time you walk past. But yeah, once we got there as mortars, we set up our mortar tubes and did a handover with the other base. So we were there as on MTF1, so which was a mentoring task force. So a little bit of history of how the task force come about. So it started off as RTF, which is Reconstruction Task Force. So the idea was to be over there and reconstruct the place, give them schools, that sort of stuff. And then they wanted to look at transitioning out of the place. So they went to MRTF, so which was mentoring and reconstruction, which was more based at like mentoring the Afghan army into being able to handle the place on their own, and also still the rebuilding stage. And then we were the first MTF, which was just straight mentoring, which had its challenges. So we were attached to Charlie Company in 6RR, to their mentoring team there. And given the climate at the time, it was pretty tough for us to drop mortars. We had to man our tubes every time there was a patrol within our AO. But it made it hard just because of all the red tape you had to cut to be able to drop a bomb. So we ended up just supplementing the boys, giving them a rest.
And sorry, Dave, anyone that doesn't understand military, you were a mortarman?
Yep.
Is that right? And when you say mortar, can you explain that?
Yeah, so I was an infantry soldier. As an infantry soldier, you end up with, or you can get a support qualification. That's whether it's mortars, snipers, reconnaissance, direct weapons, or signals are usually the support elements. And so we go away, do a course. A mortar's just an artillery weapon, pretty much. That's organic to the infantry battalion. So we have our own sort of artillery, which you can basically fire out in a circle out about 6K radius. So you can touch a fair way with it. They're a good weapon. They're a cool weapon. So one thing I'll never get to do again, but it was a lot of fun.
Mm. And that's obviously being on the front line too.
Yeah. So being a mortar, we were lucky. We have our mortar tubes set up within our little command outpost, so we didn't really have to dismantle our tubes and take them anywhere. They were fixed, and our AO, so our area of operations, was within that 6Ks usually. So everywhere the boys went, they'd always have coverage with mortars.
Yeah, okay. And let's talk about the size of the crew that you went over there with. How many guys were involved?
Yeah, so in Command Outpost Marshall, it was a pretty little group. So it was there was 10 of us in the mortars, I think. I think maybe 15 to 20 of the team guys, and then we were attached there. We had different elements coming in and out. So we had engineers every now and then and that sort of stuff. But they get shared around the company a bit just for different needs. And then we were living basically with about 40 Afghan soldiers at any one time. So yeah, their living conditions are a little bit different to ours. So we spent probably the first 6 months crook as a dog, just from where we had to go to the toilet to sharing things with the Afghan guys. The food, like we were going to the toilet in buckets. The flies would land in the buckets. Then they come and land on your food, and it just made you sick the whole time. So eventually, towards the back end of the trip, we got a septic system and a flushing toilet. So it was pretty good.
A few modern luxuries.
Yeah. So it was tough. The worst job of the base was going around and picking up the bags out of the buckets every morning. No one was really that keen on doing that, but I guess it's just what you had to do. So
fair enough. Is there anything else you want to share with us with the time that you spent in Afghanistan? Obviously, we can't go into too much detail, but is there something in particular you want to talk about?
Oh yeah, it was a good experience. It was like looking back on it, I fully I'm at peace with everything. We had a pretty wild trip. Unfortunately, we lost a couple of guys, especially our Charlie company. The 6RR as a whole, they ended up losing 6 guys. And unfortunately, one of those guys was from our base, so that's Nathan Buse, which he ended up being a good bloke. And I'd met him previously through a good mate of mine, who I was lucky enough to be deployed with over there. So I had a childhood friend who was actually in the same base in Afghanistan at the same time, which was pretty awesome. So
yeah, great experience.
Yeah.
Well, mate, let's talk about now when it was time to come home and returning to normal. I mean, going from that sort of lifestyle in Afghanistan, being surrounded by that environment and coming back home and having to live a normal life. How was that returning home?
Yeah, so we returned back in, I think, October 2010. You come home, do your decompression sort of stuff, do a few briefs. You got a fair bit of cash in your pocket. I had a girlfriend while I was over in Afghanistan, and that ended up busting up when I come home. And pretty much we just went on a tear for a year. So we had a good lump of cash. Living in Brisbane, yeah, I probably didn't handle it that well, not as well as I should have. Some people are a little bit smarter, but there's a lot of people who go down the same route that I did and just went nuts for a year.
Yep. I guess being a family member, watching you come home and having that, that freedom and all that cash, watching it. I think you bought a car, which was the most impressive thing you did, but the rest of it, I think, went into everything like pokies and punting and
punting,
yeah.
Alcohol.
Yep.
You throw it all in the mix, and none of it's good for you.
Yeah, that's right. And do you think that the Army have a responsibility there, given that you come home with a lump sum of cash? There's no sort of, you said before, a little bit of rehabilitation, but me personally looking in, going, well, why isn't someone doing a forklift ticket or a EWP ticket or something like that and keep you busy?
They probably could. They probably could rehabilitate people a little bit better, but it's also up to the individual how they handle it too. So I was at that point in time where obviously I was just recently single, living in Brisbane. I didn't really get to make the most of Brisbane when I first got up there. So when I come home, I went nuts.
Bris Vegas, mate.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good place. I still like it. So,
and okay, so then getting home, getting into a bit of a party mood, and was there a time then you sort of switched and went, right, I need to get back into the working life?
Well, what happened is, so 8-9RR who was posted to, and I deployed with 6RR. So 8-9, it was their turn to go to Afghanistan. My knee was playing up again. I had a screw in the front of my knee that I needed to get taken out, and I went into hospital to get the screw taken out, and I woke up and I'd had a knee reco. So then I ended up in a rehab platoon. Obviously, shortly after, I think I had the operation in March or something, and I got back in October, so it was only shortly after, and the boys were due to deploy again in, I think, like October or somewhere, October, November. Now, I would have been pushing it pretty hard to be able to jump on the tour with those boys, which if I didn't have the knee recos, my knee's no better now. Hindsight, I probably should have stayed in the platoon and got another run, but I made a mistake there, and then ended up in a rehab platoon, and sometimes the rehab platoon aren't full of the most positive people. Yeah, so some people have been in there for years, just taking the piss pretty much and making it hard for everyone else and just dragging everyone else down. So it got the better of me. I was fortunate enough I was in the position where I rang up our old man and said, I think I'm going to get out. Have you got a job for me? And I think he was probably the happiest day of his life. So he got me a start with a company out here on the construction at Elam West. So, yeah, it was good.
Yeah, awesome. And so then moving back to Mudgee brought its challenges as well, obviously getting back into the workforce. And did you sort of notice any changes in your mental state, or was there, like, obviously anyone that knows David really well has a short fuse, right? But was there anything in particular that you noticed where you just, I don't feel right, I need to investigate this a bit further?
Hey, when I first moved back, I was having fun. Like, I didn't see my behaviours as that detrimental to my health. I was just being what I thought was any 24, 25-year-old kid just going out and going nuts. Looking back on it now, I probably should have been a little bit smarter, but obviously hindsight's 20/20 vision. I didn't really know what it was doing to me at the time. And it cost me a lot during that period. Obviously a lot of money with the gambling, getting on the piss all the time, drugs, relationships, all sorts of stuff. So looking back at it, there's plenty of lessons to be learnt there, and I'm still learning them now, but hopefully I've got a bit more of a handle on what I'm doing.
Yep, cool. Good to hear. Let's talk a little bit about PTSD. I know you're travelling a lot better these days than a few years ago, and I think you were seeing a doctor at the time, is that right?
Yeah, so I was lucky actually. So obviously people knew I was going down the wrong path, and I can't remember how it came about, but a bloke called Ken Atkinson, I think he got in contact with me. He's a Vietnam vet. And the good thing about those old guys is they don't want us to make the same mistakes that they did. So they know what's available to them now, but which they never had, and they don't want to see us make the same mistakes as they did. And he got in contact with me and said, mate, you've got PTSD. You might not think it, you might not anything, but your behaviours, your drinking, everything, it's only going to go one way. It took me a little while to realise it. From there, like I'm still figuring it out now, but I feel like I'm fairly well on top of it. He's been really good to me. So he steered me in the right direction. I ended up doing a couple of weeks down in a place called Northside Cremorne, which is a mental health clinic mostly for veterans. There is other people in there, but you mix with other veterans, and you get to understand about PTSD. And you get to understand how it works, how it triggers you, what your reactions are, and that sort of stuff. Like I said, I don't make up nightmares or anything like that. It's more for me that I was just living like a self-destructive sort of lifestyle. Like I enjoyed going out and going bananas. But obviously it caught up with me eventually and ended up in there. I'm not saying that cured me straight away. I think I went down there in 2015 maybe. And then it still took me a couple of years after that it all started to come together. But I remember, like, I was sitting on the lounge at home. I couldn't even drive myself to Sydney or anything like that. I was just tired all the time. I could not understand why I felt so tired all the time. And obviously there was things happening in my life, like I had a relationship breakdown. I had all sorts of stuff going on. And the only time I enjoyed myself or I felt okay was when I was at the pub, getting on the piss, playing the pokies, doing everything that is bad for you in the long run but feels good at the time. And then eventually, with the help of Ken and like you guys and all that sort of stuff, I've found my way out of it. And now I can recognise the triggers and what's good for me, what's not good for me. I know if I've been drinking too much, I know how it makes me feel and how what I've got to do now to make myself feel a bit better, get myself back on the right track. So I've got a lot of people to thank. I've got my wife to thank for that now. She pulls me in line fairly well. So I still enjoy a drink. Who doesn't? I try and not as much as I used to anyway. So, but everything's good in moderation, I reckon. But
yeah, I think that's the biggest key to this whole thing is recognising when you're not feeling well. And, that doesn't mean, I feel a bit sick in the stomach. I just don't feel right. You don't feel yourself. And I think if you that's probably the key to this whole thing. If you can start to recognise that you don't feel well, that's your first step to becoming better, I think, anyway. Yeah,
I totally agree. Like, I remember laying on the lounge going, why do I feel like this? Like, what's going on? And I was just so tired. I was never thinking I was going to check myself out or anything like that, but I was thinking, like, when is this going to end? Like, what is this? Why do I feel like this? And then luckily Ken grabbed a hold of me and said, mate, you need to sort this out, otherwise it's only going to go one way.
Yeah, great.
And he used to always say something to me. He used to always say, look, he had the same dramas and he'd only ever find happiness in the bottom of a bottle of rum. And
that's right. It just drowns your thought process, doesn't it?
Yeah, it definitely does, yeah.
So life now is good. You're happily married, about to start a build a house. How's that coming on?
Yeah, well, hopefully we can get that out of the ground soon. Be all good when everything comes together. I feel like my life's always in a constant state of chaos, pretty much. So at the moment we're living with the in-laws. So hopefully we'll get that sorted out soon, and we'll be settled in our house. I've got a good job. Yeah, I'm pretty happy.
Life's good. Wait till you have kids, mate.
Yeah.
Let's talk about maybe some things that you can help maybe someone out there listening today to go, right, well, there's something I need to address. I've been putting it off for too long. Is there any sort of tips that you've got for anyone that's dealing, with mental issues at the moment? I think you probably number one there, you said that making that first step, talking to Ken, was it?
Yeah, Ken, yeah. He's helped me out heaps. I think he's helped a lot of veterans out in the local community as well. But for me, like I said, I didn't know why I felt like that, and I'd had an absolute gut feel of feeling like it. Like I couldn't stay awake, couldn't do anything. All I was doing was laying in bed, and that stemmed from drinking too much, getting hungover, laying in bed, and it just snowballed. And all I remember doing is just jumping up out of bed and making myself go mow the lawn. I forced myself to mow the lawn. And from then on, I'm like, I can't do this. I can't live like this. And then I just forced myself to do things, get out of bed, go exercise, go do all the things that I used to do. And eventually the feeling started to go away. I got a bit happier. Things started to come together for me, which was always good. And yeah, so I think to the people out there that are struggling, they've got to recognise what's bringing them down. And that's sometimes the hardest thing. But you got to try and figure out what it is and make a change. You can't keep doing to yourself what it is that makes you feel like shit, pretty much.
Yep. So figuring out is probably the hardest thing. Like you just said, it is probably the hardest thing is figuring it out. And some people that just cannot figure it out, just can't work out why they feel the way they feel. I get it sometimes. But I think one thing you just said then was make a change. You forced yourself to get out of bed. You forced yourself to mow the lawn. You forced yourself to do whatever it is, exercise. Not everyone wants to exercise, but we know how important it is. I'm not a good advocate for it.
Yeah, right.
But it's so important for you just to keep getting up and moving on.
Do something. Like I get a lot of enjoyment just going out and throwing the ball for the dogs. Like they're happy, you're happy. How good's that?
Yeah, that's great.
But yeah, you just have to do something. Something has to change, otherwise you're just going to keep getting the same results. Yeah,
cool. Look, I think that's pretty important. Look, it's an interesting story. Like I said at the start of the podcast, just a mudgy boy growing up and then ending up in Afghanistan and then moving back into society, dealing with some mental challenges and coming out the other end. So I guess, look, if there's anyone else out there struggling, they can certainly reach out to any of us, particularly David. We'll hopefully put his details up there that he can reach out, or anyone can reach out to him. Mate, is there anything else you want to add to the journey?
Yeah, I'm always open for a chat. If anyone wants to come and chat to me about any of that sort of stuff, I can always share with you what helped me. I won't always have the right answer, but don't feel like you can't approach me in any way, shape or form.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, mate, really do appreciate you coming on the podcast today and talking about your battles. And yeah, mate, I've said it. I said it 11 years ago at my wedding. The respect I got for this guy for doing what he did, it's unbelievable. So thanks again, mate, for coming in.
Cheers, mate. Appreciate it.